Nightreign is a spin-off of Elden Ring in which you try to defeat as many bosses as possible, all while running away from the Fortnite storm, before fighting a stronger end boss. After doing this twice, you're taken to a designated Nightlord to win or lose the run. Recently, Nightreign's DLC was released, and with it 2 new bosses. The second one, the Dreglord, is easily the hardest boss in the game, but the Dreglord alone is not the only challenge, as it takes 30 plus minutes just to get to the Nightlord. So in this video, I will go over my journey to victory over this rotted mass of flesh, starting with my first recorded attempt to outline the basics of any Nightreign run. To start, I dropped in near a holy temple and fought the Oracle envoys. To beat the Dreglord, I was aiming to hit level 15 and get good weapon passives like charge attack damage. Every boss you defeat gives you runes to level up and drops a pillar to get loot from. Unfortunately, the envoys didn't give me anything useful. After running further, I found an elder lion roaming around, which is the second way to find bosses in Nightreign, as they're either in set structures or as enemies in the wild parts of the map. This pillar drop gave me the other kind of loot, character buffs, in this case stamina regeneration. From these, I was looking for maximum health, physical damage negation, and stance breaking. Next, I went into the cave to kill a troll, in order to get the guaranteed smithing stone. While getting a stronger weapon to use is optimal, to reduce my reliance on luck, I tried to upgrade my spawn weapon to epic rarity in every run, as it's just more consistent. After traveling to an enemy camp, I stopped at the merchant, which is another pillar of Nightreign runs, as he sells a tier 1 smithing stone, and since I'm playing solo, he always sells a wind and grace for a revive. He also sells various weapons which I can search for bonuses like charge attack damage and improved negation at full HP. Using his smithing table, I was also able to upgrade my sword fully, getting a major early power boost. I took on the Banished Knights at which point I got the stupid Balancer event, which teleports you to a random camp and makes you fight a weaker individual version of the Balancer boss. This is really annoying as it interrupts what you're trying to do, and if you don't defeat the Balancers, you permanently lose flask charges. Luckily for me, I was sent back to the Banished Knights and quickly finished the Balancer off. Just like in Elden Ring, I picked up a sacred tear from the church, although in Nightreign it increases the amount of flasks. I ran for a while until I reached the Flame Monk camp to take out the second Balancer. Defeating these boss invasions gives you unique bonuses, like in this case the chance for a random free revive, which has the chance to save a run in its last moments. I ran around killing the Flame Monks and stopped to buy the weapons with charge attack bonuses at the merchant. A key location in Nightreign is the castle, which usually houses a powerful enemy in its basement. In this case, the Black Knife Assassin, which yielded nothing useful. Proceeding forwards in the castle, there's a guaranteed pillar with 3 talismans, so I scooped up bonus stamina. I killed as many enemies as possible before the map closed in and was able to get the 10% stance breaking bonus, which is one of the key buffs I look for. At this point, the map had fully closed in, so I fought the enemies and then took on the Red Bear. During a Nightreign run of the Dreglord, you can either get the bears spawning on night 1 where you fight the Red Bear as the boss, or get Deathlight Frogs and Knights, which when defeated spawn a Death Knight gang fight. Out of the two, the Red Bear was probably a little easier initially, but after learning the Death Knights, there's no major difference in difficulty. From the boss pillar, I grabbed successive attacks to restore FP, which would be useful later on, if I get a weapon with a stronger Ash of War. At the start of the next night, I fought a wild red wolf and got increased max FP. In Nightreign, there are 5 shifting earth events: the Crater, Mountaintop, Rotted Woods, Nakaletto, and the Hollow. Each shifting earth is a unique area with scripted bosses and a special permanent bonus for reaching the end of it. For example, the Crater, which I had in this run, ends in a magma worm, which when defeated grants access to an altar to upgrade a weapon to legendary rarity. So I began making my way down to the magma worm at the bottom of it. From a pillar, I got 32% damage negation at full HP, which is really good, and after fighting some more flame monks, I picked up a shield with 20% increased charge attack damage. This was helping my build really come together. Once I got to the magma worm, he went down without issue, giving me 20% charge attack damage. And I upgraded my spawn sword at the altar, as throughout the run I had failed to get a better weapon. Since I had been efficient, I was able to fly out of the crater and grab another flask charge that was pretty out of the way, plus buy a second wind and grace at the big merchant. With that, the night began to close in and I took out the waves of DLC spirit birds, signaling the dancing lion, one of the 2 possible night 2 bosses. The other possible boss will play a much bigger role later on. I'm not very well practiced at the DLC bosses and find the dancing lion in particular to be very annoying, but thanks to the strength of my build, he went down pretty easily. I even lucked out with a legendary loot pillar granting me 15% more stance breaking. Before the Nightlord of each run, you get a resting area with Sights of Grace and a merchant, allowing me to reach level 15 and buy another Wind and Grace to revive with. At this point, I had a legendary upgraded weapon and good passives like charge attack damage and damage negation, as well as powerful character bonuses such as stance breaking and increased max HP. However, all of this was still not enough to defeat the Dreglord. Only with much more practice and luck would I manage that. I did get very far and this run was probably winnable, but the Dreglord bested me with its initially confusing combos and stalled out AoE transitions, leading me to fall just short of victory. This highlights the major difficulty in beating him. While the boss may only be reasonably difficult, it takes 40 minutes to get another shot, and in all likelihood you'll not get enough luck throughout the run to win. Generally, every viable run starts with killing a basic castle or temple boss, and then quickly finding an Evergel in church. This means an ideal spawn location gives me access to a low-level boss in an arena with a stone sword key. While it's not necessary to reset if you don't, the run will be much more luck dependent to make up for it. In this instance, I got a strong start but failed to get any good weapons, and wasn't able to route any mines into the run to upgrade my spawn weapon fully. But thanks to getting a favorable castle pull of Banished Knights, I was able to make up for it by getting reduced FP consumption and lots of levels. While running to the final area of the map, I bought an Ash of War FP cost reducing item. While all of this had me set up to get potentially good luck on night 2 with an Ash of War weapon, it didn't pan out as the Death Knights are pretty hard if you're unprepared, and at level 7 with a rare tier D spawn weapon, I couldn't win the 4v1. Other times, a run falls short to map generation, such as this run where I fought Augur, gaining FP restoration from flasks, then received 25% decreased FP costs of all skills, which set me up to get a good Ash of War weapon, but my castle had trolls, so I couldn't get any runes from killing castle enemies. I was able to buy a Wind and Grace and saw a few good passives in the merchant shop, and I had enough power to take down the Death Knights pretty easily. However, come night 2, my damage was simply lacking as I had no good passive buffs, so each great enemy took numerous deaths to defeat, slowing my rune acquisition. I rolled Godfrey's Axe, which is one of the worst legendary weapons, but still better than nothing. While taking out some Flame Monks, I bought the skill attack damage, critical hit damage, and full HP damage negation passes, making my build much stronger. I also picked up the 12% physical damage negation from the pillar. I grabbed another flask, then began my arduous battle with a ball-bearing hunter. However, after respawning in a church, I ran back and took him out, netting me the Moonveil. This was the exact weapon I needed to boost my damage, and it worked perfectly with the FP buffs I had gotten. After getting even more damage negation from a boss pillar, I took on the Night 2 boss Dancing Lion without issue and made my way into the Dreglord's arena. Despite all of my damage negation buffs, thanks to the lack of a shifting earth or good castle, I had only reached level 12, meaning my damage and survivability was subpar. It didn't help I only had one passive boosting my Ash of War damage and nothing for charged attacks. As a result, I lost before he even entered the second phase. In another good run, I had a very promising start, pulling a bleed infused Godskin Peeler, which has the potential for a very good build later on. But the run was ended by RNG shortly after, with Morgott spawning during a fight with another boss inside of a tiny cave. Losing to him gives a permanent increase to your damage taken, so I had to reset. To start the next run, I immediately got bleed and frost infused claws from a pillar and was off to the races. Claws are a very powerful weapon class, and the Dreglord is weak to both statuses. I quickly got key pickups like the smithing stone and a lucky talisman drop. I also bought chain attack and critical hit bonus weapons at the merchant. I took out more bosses for bonuses and got even more multi-hit buffs. I got the Death Knights, which were no match for the claws, and I even rolled getting Bloodflame Blade on my weapon after a riposte, which would vastly increase my bleed buildup. Kaligo appeared, netting me more runes. I took out more bosses to level up and made it to the Night 2 boss. This is where my hopes of beating the Dreglord got completely crushed. As tension grew while I killed the waves of one-tappable enemies, down from the sky drops a hulking knight, ominously landing in the murk. After using my ultimate and riposting, he dashed away. I thought it would be no issue winning as I had gotten Artorias to 2/3 health already, but I would be dead wrong. After panic rolling and getting generally destroyed, I lost without coming particularly close to victory. Now, I don't know if Artorias is weaker in Dark Souls and was just drastically scaled up for Nightreign, or if I'm just bad, but I found the fight to be unreasonably hard. However, even playing well with good RNG wasn't enough, as in this run where I was at level 10 and had a decent build, I tragically lost to there being no pause even in single player, so I died while the game ran in my backpack between classes. Or this run where I was once again ambushed by the ever honorable Morgott. It's also worth mentioning that the DLC Underground Shifted Earth was an instant run ender, is I may admittedly just be stupid, but I could never get a run off the ground. Eventually I got a very good run where I was able to defeat numerous great enemies, getting several powerful weapons throughout the run, eventually ending up with a Death's Poker for Knight Artorias. I was able to burst him down to just below half health before he attacked me, thanks to the power of my build. However, he brutally slimed me out. The next run I'll go more in depth is to the routing because mystifyingly I got the exact same map with the same bosses 3 times in a row, and all of which I almost won. To start, I got a Stone Sword key, then took out a Guardian Golem. I proceeded to an Everjail filled with the Beastmen, and lightning is pretty annoying, but they give a good amount of runes. Afterwards, I traveled through a cave picking up a smithing stone and came out near a magma worm field boss. Afterwards, I ran through to a church, which is nearby to a golden hippo. Following that was another church, and then I sprinted towards the edge of the night to get a Stone Sword key. Running back towards the golden tree, I pit stopped at a merchant to pick up a Wind and Grace and upgrade my spawn weapon. The Night 1 boss spawned is the Great Red Rune Bear, which went down pretty quickly. At the start of Night 2, I began making my way to the Rotted Woods, and on the way fought a Godskin Apostle and Knight's Cavalry before grabbing the last flask. After obtaining the information on where the Rot Orb is, I grabbed the Rot immunity bonus and made my way through the Shifting Earth, fighting the Draconic Tree Sentinel, Deathrite Bird, Erd Tree Avatar, Ulcerated Tree Spirit, and lastly a normal Tree Sentinel. Luckily, apart from the Deathrite Bird, these are all easy and consistent fights which helped me to take them down without much issue. Night 2 ended with the Divine Beast Dancing Lion, which is very annoying but not super challenging. Going into the Dreglord, I had a full inventory of Wind and Graces, but unfortunately I wasn't practiced enough at the fight, so I lost with about a quarter of his total health bar remaining. In the next run, I got very lucky with two-handing damage bonus and went into the Dreglord with 2 Wind and Graces and the Death's Poker. I did great damage and quickly burst down the first phase, although I burned through 4 heals. Luckily, I didn't use any of my revives. The second phase was pretty rocky as I quickly ran out of heals, but thanks to the Death's Poker, I was able to deal half his health bar with 1 stagger. However, I repeatedly died as I whittled him down. In the end, I nearly killed the Dreglord, but miscalculated his death, and instead of running away, died while he was one-tapped to his Rod and Junk Geyser, which was definitely the most disheartening loss thus far. Immediately after, still on the same map, I made it to the Dreglord with a few graces and a great build with critical hit and general damage boosts. I also managed to get the Wing of Estelle, which is arguably the best PvE weapon in Elden Ring. The fight started off pretty smoothly, with the Wing dealing great damage, although throughout the first phase, I was generally over-aggressive, leading to me wasting a revive and 4 flasks. The second phase went a little better, but I was still trading hits most of the time, which led to me dying when he was pretty low once I ran out of heals and revives. I also got a great run with Mohg's Trident where I had lots of bleed bonuses and was max level, but I lost to the constant threat of Artorias, who throughout this journey ended numerous runs for no good reason. I got another Frost and Bleed Claw run with 2 Graces and was at max level, but I played pretty bad and didn't have very good perks, so I died after struggling to reach the Dreglord's second phase. On another run, I made it to the end with only 3 weapons, meaning I had very little in the way of damage boosting or negating passives. However, despite this, I played fairly well compared to other runs as I was beginning to learn the boss. I almost made it to the end of the fight, but I constantly died from the frailty of my character and lost. With all of those runs and the overview of the game out of the way, it's finally time for the one where I won. I got an ideal first arena, grabbing a Stone Sword key, then taking out the Mage and Crystalline duo, which is probably the fastest of the basic bosses. I ran over to an Evergel and fought the Onyx Lords, which are really annoying in Nightreign, and I died twice, which wasted some time, but it was worth it for the 20% bonus Flask Restoration. After taking out a Grafted Scion, I dropped a sword with 20% charge attack damage. Of course, right after, the Balancers decided to abduct me, and after struggling to fight the Divine Bird Warrior, I took the Balancer out and got 20% melee attack power from the pillar, which is really strong. And then I ran to the next Balancer camp. Upon defeating the last Balancer, I got the random revive buff, which is definitely a powerful perk for the Dreglord fight. The pillar from the Elder Lion also gave me 20% increased skill attack power. I bought a Wind and Grace, a weapon with full HP damage negation, and leveled up my spawn sword at the camp's merchant. Then as the night closed, I came across some sort of large British zoo animal and rolled the Bloodhound's Fang, which is one of the best weapons in the game. However, because of my greed in killing the hippo, I made it to the final zone with no heals and used my solo revive just to kill the bears before the boss spawned. Luckily, thanks to the power of the Fang, I was able to win without using my Wind and Grace. At the start of night 2, I did a little gardening and increased my health 10% by spending time outside. I also fought the Cave Knight to get a smithing stone for the Bloodhound's Fang. I got another 10% max HP from a pillar. I found a great enemy magma worm, however the fight drug on forever as he wanted to do anything but actually fight me. And I died at one point while having to rock climb mid-battle. Bonus damage on an enemy after riposting them. I was still at 3 flask charges, so I ran all around the map grabbing Sacred Tears. Making my way to the castle, I upgraded the Fang and took out the Hero of Zamor in the basement, which gave me a really good perk, bonus damage in the vicinity of blood loss, which synergizes well with the Fang's innate bleed. I killed a few Crucible Knights for runes, but the night quickly closed in. Luckily, I wasn't cursed with Artorias, so the run could continue. Even still, the Dancing Lion is a pretty hit or miss fight for me, but luckily the Fang shredded his health bar. That is, as long as I was able to actually hit him. As my last pillar before the Dreglord, I was handsomely rewarded with 18% physical damage negation, which is one of the best possible perks. I only had 2 Winding Graces, but there was always a chance at getting a Balancer revive if things were dire. The Dreglord fight started off strong as I had finally come to understand most of his attacks and was able to dodge more consistently. Of course, the strength of my build didn't hurt as I bullied him with bleed and staggers. The first phase went down with only 1 heal used, and 2, possibly more revives remaining. To start the second phase, for once I didn't get hit by a Rot Geyser, and was able to pop my ult right as the Dreglord dashed straight for the Wilder's cake. Afterwards, I went for a series of bad Asha wars which drained some heals without any damage to show for it. But I dialed in and stuck to his side, which makes most of his attacks miss as he lunges past me. I was able to get a big bleed proc right before the rot transition. Unfortunately, this last part of the fight I have less experience with, so I ran out of heals soon after he began dashing from the pillars. But I got a stagger which gave me some breathing room, and while I had no heals left, I did still have my revives, so I wasn't too concerned. That was until I stared death in the face and like a grandma watched as I was killed by a highly telegraphed dash. Now things were getting dire. I only had 1 revive left and a decent amount of the Dreglord's health bar to go. I kept getting hit by every rot explosion which rapidly dropped me down to 1 tap. However, I got my ult, putting momentum back in my favor. Except when I used it, he just went into another Rot Geyser, which killed me and robbed me of my riposte. Luckily though, I had what I thought was my last Winding Grace left, but when I checked my inventory, it turns out the Balancers had been smiling over this run all along, and had given me 2 quick revives in a row without using any Graces. With that, I used a quick Asha War and riposted the Dreglord, finishing him off with a grapple gun to the face. Well, it turns out it was never actually that close. The winning battle with the Dreglord was one of the most nerve-wracking boss fights I've ever done, as it was a 10-hour journey to reach him. This video took a long time to make, so I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed.